Hi guys, welcome to our channel Swipe Chillin. We are with the next video in our DBMS series, that is DBMS architecture. I think you guys have seen the previous video where we have discussed about what is data and what is DBMS, what's the previous FPS system that we have used before the DBMS, and the characteristics of DBMS and a lot more. If you haven't watched the previous video, do watch it and come back to the next video in the DBMS series. Today we'll be seeing about the architecture of the DBMS. If you go with the DBMS management system, it's divided into the five major components, that is software, hardware, data, and the user, and this procedures, that is called as function. Like I have already told, it's the interaction between the the software or hardware user interface layer between the software to the user. Between we are connected with the API. So if the API it calls them database access languages or procedures that calls the functions and invokes the data and retrieves the data that's suitable for the user. So we'll be seeing about this each of the five major components in detail in the video. If you see with the hardware is something like called as computer or hard disk or IO channels for the data or any other physical component. Suppose if you take with the physical components like an ultrasonic sensor or it takes the distance sensors or the light measuring scales. These are all come also the physical components where you, with the help of some physical component, you are storing the data into the memory. So when we run the Oracle or a MySQL in our computers, like our hard disk, our keyboard, which we type the commands, and our RAM, ROM will be all the part of the DBMS hardware. So if you go with the software, this is the main component where a software program controls everything. The DBMS software is something wrapped around the database, like it provides us ease to easily interface or store and data. Like you will be having the database access languages like DDL, DML, and there are very easy commands like TCL languages where you write something in one line commands and you can get retrieve the loads of data. Like if you go with the manually, if you have thousand, suppose let's take example, you have three members' names, like say Ram, Raju, and Siri. I need the data of the names whose name starts with R. So I go and search in all the data and I return it as a Ram and Raj. So if it is 3, I can give it in seconds answer. What if it is 100? It takes some time. What if the data is in thousands or lakhs, crores? At the time, it's not easy to go to each and every name and check whether the name starts with R and F. If you go with the DBMS languages with a single line command, I'll tell about the commands. With the single line command with using the select statement, you can retrieve the data, the selected like whatever you need, the user needs from thousand or one like any number of n number of vast number of entries. This is how the software is used. If you see with the data is something like resource. We already seen it's a collection of raw facts. Whenever the data is process, then it comes into an information. If you see with the what is this metadata, meta is data is something data about the data, like you know what is, suppose you name Ram, Raju, and some Siri, you know these are the names, and if you have the name, their phone number, some nine something, and this age 20, 21, 22 is this data. This is in the table format, like age, name, and their mobile number. It goes on. You see, like if you see in the physical representation, this is how the data is stored. Whenever it comes to the computer, like the data is stored in such a way, it stores in the metadata, like Raju 0x1 2 something. or the name is like 3F, some other format. This is called as a metadata. It just links this address to the data. So this is called as the metadata. Okay, if you also see if the name in the database, the DBMS will store it's like what is the size of the name. It's stored as a related data, some other data, or it is independent. Suppose this name table also refers to the employee table of some XY organization. Employee, name, age, and mobile number. This is also same the data what we have, name, age, mobile number, right? So this it's reference. This is all the consist of the metadata information. If you see the procedures or database access languages, procedures and triggers you'll be seeing in the lot coming videos in detail. These are general instructions, also called as a simple programs. What you see to log in or log out system, to manage database, to take backups. These are already include. These are standard include procedures. We can also have the built-in procedure also. If you see with the database access language, you can see it's a simple language that used to write and submit the data, like I told you earlier, to need to take the data, retrieve or use the data. And if you see with the users, like you have three types of users, like end users, administrators, and designers. So we'll be seeing about each of them in detail now. If you see with the database administrator, like DBA, is the one, it's a role in the DBMS. If you go on looking for the jobs related to DBMS, then you will be seeing like this kind of roles, like database administrators, application programmers, like that. Database administrators are someone who manages the complete database system. Like if you go on looking at like who have the license keys, who have the availability, who gives the user accounts, who have the ability to give the access, you can also call it as a like admin. When you go with an application programmer or software developer, this user group is involved in developing and designing the parts of the DBMS. Like you need a DBMS or a system or a button, something related to get the user data, then you just have that button and this backend code is written by the application programmer or the software developer. If you see with the end user that are you, these modern applications like web apps or some websites which are used by the end user, like you don't know what's happening in the backend data or storage data, they will be running in the server and application programs or the procedure helps to data retrieval, and we end users are just who retrieve, update or store data. We will be performing the functionalities, right? If you see with the architecture, so architecture is not directly available for the users and applications. Then what's it's something like it's located. So we have two types of DBMS systems, like that is centralized and decentralized. Centralized means all the data, whatever we have, are stored at one location. And decentralized means multiple copies of databases are stored at different locations. If the data is stored in different locations, something like whatever the application you are using, or stored in some maybe in US, UK, or some maybe in Australia, like different locations. But you are in India, have the access to use that data. This is all because of the DBMS, that is decentralized system. Like multiple copies of database are stored at different locations. Whether it's centralized, then all the data is stored at one location. So if you see with the architecture, one tier architecture, two tier architecture, and three tier architecture. One tier architecture means in simply like database directly available to the user. Like you have the local database and you have the application. This is kind of one tier architecture. If you see with the one tier DBMS, If you say with a computer, your computer, whatever you perform, you paint something and you store it in CPU, and only your CPU knows that image, whatever you painted. The other system just behind that also can't be have the access. So it's a centralized to your local database and your application. So the computers are best example for the one-tier DBMS. And you'll be seeing about two-tier DBMS and three-tier DBMS following. If you see with the two-tier DBMS, you have the user or client and the DBMS, and there is an application layer that helps to access. Through the application interface layer, you communicate with the DBMS. This is called as two-tier DBMS. It takes the user request and sends the response. So an application interface known as ODBC, like it's called as Open Database Connectivity. This provides an API to that allow client-side program to call the DBMS. Most DBMS vendors provide ODBC driver. So whenever you get a term in your software developing team, ODBC driver, so you don't get confused. It's an open database community connectivity. It just provides the communication from the client side and the server side. It's a kind of API. So if you see with the three-tier architecture, it's an extension of two-tier architecture. In the same way, how you have a DBMS and user client application layer, we have an additional GUI presentation layer. This is called as it provides the ease for the accessing and also how the user sees. So if you see with an Instagram, you have n number of data stored here, and you have application developer who access the data. So whenever you come as a user, you have an interface coming with reels, shorts, everything. You'll be scrolling you in the Insta. Like it provides a nice GUI and interface layer where we can see with multiple data entities, and it provides an additional representation, also graphical user interface layer, GUI layer. It provides end user even without knowing any idea of the application, the end user can have a clear representation and easy to use the data, whatever he or she possesses. Between the two-tier and three-tier architecture. So the two-tier and three-tier architecture are like most used architectures as we see. If you see with the two-tier, it's a client-server architecture, whereas the three-tier base is web-based. What we see, websites and apps, all comes under three-tier architecture. In two-tier architecture, application logic is like buried inside the user interface or within the database. We can see of both the sides. In three-tier, it's a middle tier which consists of the process logic. Like it's separated. Only the user sees what the access, like how the functions work. In this, it contains of two layers, that is the client tier and the data tier. And here we have client, business layer and data layer. Business layer consists of all the process, client is the user, and the data layer is the storage what the user possesses. So that's the end of the video. Congratulations for starting your DBMS learning. We have seen in this video about the different architecture, its components, and different types of architecture. We'll be seeing you in another next video in this DBMS series. Thank you guys for watching.